Hi everyone, welcome to Roundhouse Report. Enjoyed your Roundhouse here, please subscribe. I appreciate it. This is part 2. The U.S. balling up to Iran. Woo! Part 2, May 14th, 2019. Have to be real careful with dating. In fact, at this point, even with time, it is about 6:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, United States. It's Tuesday, May 14th, 2019. Because in 2 hours we could be in a shooting war with Iran. I have no idea what's going on. I think I may have a little bit of a notion though. If you look at part 1 of my video, balling up to Iran, that was breaking news. That occurred 3 days ago. The United States we're surge deploying a massive amount of firepower into the Persian Gulf / Iranian region. CENTCOM, which is they control, within the framework of the Department of Defense and the Pentagon, they control they control U.S. military operations in the Middle East. Okay, they straight up said, quote, that the assets are being deployed because of, quote, clear indications that Iranian proxy forces were making preparations to possibly attack U.S. forces in the region. End quote. Wow. So we surge deployed. This is a massive amount of firepower. An aircraft carrier strike group, a bomber task force, additional fighter jets, an amphibious assault ship, which I'm assuming is a Marine Expeditionary Unit that's capable of landing about 3,000 Marines with massive firepower from the sea and from the air, Apache gunships, etc. And additional surface-to-air missile batteries, the Patriot system. And like I said, U.S. CENTCOM, based in MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida, they straight up said, we're sending this because of Iran. I'm messing around with we're sending it for just as a general deployment. We're straight up, we're sending this because of Iran. And it's weird because the next day after sending this, because this is breaking news, the next day, last night, before I went to bed, guess what happened? And this is on my Minds feed on Minds.com if you want to look up the article source. It was Business Insider, I believe, which is also my source for the latest development, Business Insider. And actually, this particular article regarding the, quote, sabotaging is from a different source than Business Insider. Last night, this morning, before I went to bed, I saw a headline and I read briefly about out of nowhere, the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates. Suddenly their oil platforms and their oil vessels, I think 3 or 4 for the United Arab Emirates and 2 or 3 for Saudi Arabia, were suddenly, quote, sabotaged, end quote. Not much more detail was given. The ships some were destroyed, some had to go back. The news reports were they didn't explicitly say mine, but it said that the ships were hurt by exploding objects that were floating on the surface of the water. They're probably mines. The Iranians have long threatened to mine the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz leads into the Persian Gulf. Now, a lot of oil moves through there, very important strategically, and it's narrow. It's narrow, and the Iranians have missiles lining the coastline there because it's, Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz is right up on Iran. That's their backyard. So they have a lot of anti-access area denial systems, ship-killing missiles, stuff like that, lining their coast. And they've threatened before, hey, if you mess with us more, anymore, America, for years they've been saying that. For years they've been saying this. We're going to mine the Strait of Hormuz and we're going to cause all these problems. Well, we have contingency plans for all that. The United States knows how to clear out a minefield at sea made by a third world country that we've been tracking and wanting to go to war with for the last 20 years. I think we have contingency plans drawn up for that. The bottom line is Iran is scared because the United States pulled out of the nuclear pact about a year ago. And ever since, Iran's been kind of cocky because they've been thinking that the Europeans, the Chinese, and the Russians would stick in the deal with them. And they're not. Front companies are. Some guys are getting through loopholes and stuff. But generally speaking, these companies from Europe and stuff that had begun to invest in Iran once the nuclear deal under Obama was signed, they began to invest in Iran, and then Trump was elected in 2016, and he said, I'm pulling out. He pulled out. Now these European, Chinese, Russian, etc., all these foreign, these multinational corporations, they need to choose between doing business using, I guess, the Iranian central banking system, which is on lockdown from American sanctions, or do they want to have access to the global market, aka New York City, the epicenter of the global economy, the U.S. currency, the dollar, the U.S. central banking system, etc. Everyone's pulling out of Iran. Iran is scared because they thought over the past year that they could cobble something together, and they couldn't. So now they're scared, and they're threatening to do more tests, and they're threatening to enrich uranium. And by they, I mean the regime, because I like the Iranian people. Went on a date with a young woman. She was a German Persian. She was an Iranian German. She's hot. Yeah. So basically, the Iranians for the last decade or so they've been ever since we toppled Saddam Hussein in 2003. Both were scared of each other. Saddam Hussein's Iraq and Iran, they had fought a devastating war in the 1980s. Millions of people were killed. They were both afraid of each other. And in 2002/2003, when the ultimatum was given, hey, Saddam Hussein, you need to publicly declare once and for all whether or not you have weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein he later told FBI interrogators prior to being hanged, he was like, I didn't speak up because I didn't want to undo the deterrence power we had established with Iran, because they were both scared of each other. We went in and we toppled Saddam Hussein, massive power vacuum opened up, and ever since then, ever since 2003, Iran has been trying to stretch from Iran. Well, they've done it through Iraq, where they have about 100,000, quote, militia, the popular mobilization units, into Syria, into the Mediterranean. That's called the Shiite Crescent. If you want to Google that. That's what Iran's trying to do. They're trying to make the Persian Empire, I call it the Persian Empire version 3. You have the one of old, the ancient Greeks fought, and then the Macedonians. And then you have a bunch of stuff happening, whatever. The Romans fought the Parthians, which is the Persian Empire, called the Parthian Empire. Stuff happened, whatever, the Shah. The Islamic Revolution happened. Now you have the modern nation state of Iran. The Iranian Empire version 3. Gray zone warfare. I recommend researching that. Gray zone warfare is what all this is about. Because we have the amount of assets that we send, that we surge forward, that we surge deployed, and is on his way, if not already there, apparently was on point, because these tankers, these oil tankers that have been hit by apparent Iranian mines, it could be a false flag. Why not? We've been wanting to go to a war with Iran since 2003. Not before. John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, he advises Trump every day at 8 a.m. He has a 20-minute consultation with President Trump. He has the full attention of the president. John Bolton hates Iran. It's funny. Prior to becoming the National Security Advisor, which is like a freaking wet dream for him, he's famous. He was famous for going on Fox and stuff, and he would, as a correspondent, he was like a freelancer, and he wasn't a policymaker. He was just a freelancer, and he would go on Fox, and he would lay out these detailed plans on why and how we should go about attacking Iran. Fast forward a few years, Trump's in the White House. The Emperor Trump, the Trumponian era that we are in right now. The Trumponian era. Lots of weird stuff's happening. Now Bolton is actually in a position to execute this stuff that he's talked about for many, many years. And he has the president's ear every morning at 8 a.m. And suddenly we're surge forwarding. We are surge deploying a force that is capable of conquering China. We're going to balls to the walls against Iran. That's why I'm saying the U.S. is balling up to Iran. This is part 2. And again to date. It's May 14th, 2019. 2 days after the surge deployment that I just described, or a couple days later, these headlines are coming out about, quote, sabotage against Saudi and United Arab Emirates oil assets in the Persian Gulf region. All right, so I went to a news source, Business Insider. Posted that to Minds.com too if you want to check it out. Very enlightening article. Quote, according to the article, quote, the U.S. military briefed President Trump could result in the deployment of up to 120,000 troops to the Middle East, according to national security officials cited in a New York Times report published Monday, which was yesterday the 13th. We are going to potentially send 120,000 troops, combat troops, to the Middle East. We already have tens of thousands there if you look at all the bases that pepper the region. I mean, okay, Afghanistan, 10,000 there? We have 6,500 publicly declared in Iraq already. We have at least a few hundred special operations forces in Syria, I believe a couple thousand, forward air observers and stuff like that to help the Syrian Democratic Forces, which are mainly 90% Kurds. Those are our pit bulls. They're the only ones that successfully fought back ISIS on the ground. That's all I have to say. That's pretty impressive. Even the Syrian military couldn't do that. They're about 50,000 strong, and we created them under Obama. It started, and we created them, we trained them, and once Trump was elected, the rules of engagement were loosened, and we actually allowed them to fight to win, and we helped them as if we were fighting a war. Wow! So we actually started using airplanes more, and anyhow. So back to the article, quote, the latest blueprint is an updated version of a destabilizing cyber warfare operation called, quote, Nitro Zeus, end quote, which would target Iran's power grid and military. This is getting serious. We never hear, we being the general public, we rarely, if ever, hear about United States cyber operations. The last time I heard about cyber operations was Stuxnet, which was a virus that the United States and Israel launched or attacked Iran with a decade ago. A long time ago, it hit their centrifuges and their nuclear facilities. It was devastating to them. It messed them up. So all of a sudden, we have Nitro Zeus. Quote, the latest blueprint is an updated version of a destabilizing cyber warfare operation called Nitro Zeus, which would target Iran's power grid and military. To continue, U.S. defense officials also cited, quote, indications of a credible threat by Iranian regime forces, end quote, earlier in May. Israeli intelligence officials uncovered a potential attack against U.S. interests, which fueled Bolton's, quote, unrelenting, end quote, rhetoric toward the Iranians, Axios reported. So that's Axios source. CNN suggesting any potential attack would have targeted U.S. forces in Syria and in Iraq, the ones I just mentioned, because Iran is trying to establish that land bridge base from Iran to the Mediterranean Sea, and the United States is blocking it. With 6,500 troops in the western deserts of Iraq, and we have special operators with the Syrian Democratic Forces at Al-Tanf, which is the southernmost border crossing leading from Iraq into Syria. And if we have troops there, the Iranians can't get to where they want to go. We put a freaking nail right in the middle of their little bridge. It's no longer a bridge. We just dammed it up. And they don't like that. So that is the latest here. Now we're going to, in addition to an aircraft carrier strike group, a bomber task force, fighter jets, an amphibious assault ship, and surface-to-air missile batteries, we are also now, a day later, military straight up said, hey, the military now. This isn't coming from Trump's mouth. This is the military. The U.S. military briefed President Trump, and they're recommending that we send up to 120,000 troops into the Middle East, specifically to counter Iran. This is a big deal. The fact that we revealed a cyber operation, there's a reason why we never hear about Americans hacking into stuff. We don't want to reveal sources and methods. We don't want the enemy to know what we are capable of doing. The fact that this article mentions Nitro Zeus, which is a cyber warfare operation targeting Iran's power grid and military. The fact that we announced that the United States government allowed that to be released, is indicative that something big is about to happen unless Iran does something. Now, in the midst of all this, Trump has been quoted as saying, I just want Iran to come to the table. So the ball's in their court. Speaking of balls, the U.S. is balling up to Iran. Part 2. Quick update. Yesterday I slept funny. I woke up. I already have ulnar nerve problems because I used to lift weights real heavy as a power lifter. Jacked up my ulnar nerve. So it's all pinched here. It's your funny bone. And it affects pinky and ring finger, right? On each hand. You can just tap your elbow until you feel a little bloop. Funny bone. All right. I've had issues with this for years. In both arms. All right. Yesterday I took a nap and I woke up. I slept wrong. I don't know. I was on the couch. This has been numb ever since. Ring finger, pinky, mainly the pinky. Numb ever since. I have just freaking I need to go to an orthopedic doctor. I'm 33 years old. That shouldn't be happening. So I have this tape on here to try to stabilize, and then I have this cracker on here to try to remind me to keep my arms straight. Keep my arms straight. And then you got some kind of, apparently a YouTube guy watching my YouTube videos like, yo, dude, those aren't calcium deposits on your hand, man. You have this freaking disease that's rare and incurable, and only people that's like 50 years and up get it. It's like deposits in the fascia of your flesh. Yeah. All about it. Hands and feet. Boo, 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 boo. All right, so Iran's about to get lit up. They are scared. No one can do anything about it. The Europeans, what are they going to do? Nothing. The Russians, what are they going to do? Nothing. The Chinese, what can they do? Nothing. Now, they can cause problems elsewhere. The Russians could cause problems in Europe while we're occupied with Iran. The Chinese could break out in Southeast Asia while we're East and Southeast Asia while we're occupied with Iran. One thing at a time. Because who backs Iran? Russia primarily, and then China. So by going after Iran, we're cutting off a tentacle. A Russian tentacle. Bloop, 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 bloop. All right, so the Ryan Ash Report. Please subscribe. And this is a photo collage of myself here. Back when I was powerlifting. Much bigger. Here, these are my security guard photos. My securities. And this here is minds.com user at I'm sorry I got fat. All one word. At I'm sorry I got fat. Minds.com/ I'm sorry I got fat. He's an obese. He's an obese. He's broken several of my chairs. It's my best bud though. I love him. Jody Roundhouse. Minds.com/ Jody Roundhouse. Please subscribe. All right, guys. Next time.